Hello everybody, welcome back to Fanblade. This week we're doing mad science. I'm going to try and fake a flame effect in a very dull piece of wood. This is a bit of Rimu. It's got not a lot going on, and there's some woodworm and other things attacked that corner of it, so it's absolutely useless for me for building an instrument out of, but perfect for experimentation, and that's what we're going to do today. A couple of years ago on the Crimson Guitars YouTube channel, there was a video where Ben was deliberately denting a piece of wood to try and create a fake flame effect, or a fake figuring effect. I'll put a link in the description so you can see that. And I've been wanting to try this for ages, and I see no reason why it won't work. When you have a piece of flamed maple, what's happened to get that effect is that as the tree is growing, it gets blown in one direction for one season, and then the next season the weather changes and it gets blown in the other direction. And so as the tree is growing, it's constantly getting pushed around like this, and you get that effect come out in the grain, that wavy effect. It's wood fibres going in opposite directions to one another. So you put some dents in it, you sand it flat, you put some finish on it, and hopefully we should get some very interesting chatoyance happening. We shall see. Right now, rod's cleaned up, and this wheel is it's got a ever so slight camber to it for most of it, but I just wanted a little bit more, so I've ground off that section and I've just given it a little bit more of a rollover. That, of course, turned out, when I drilled the hole, turned out to be cast iron, which is actually very cool. That's a difficult piece to cast. I thought it was steel, so I started trying to use lube when I was drilling the hole, but of course it didn't need it, so that's kind of interesting. Be fun to see how it stands up to a repeated pounding with a hammer. The idea now is that I've threaded that hole and I've cleaned out the threads, because you've got to use oil to cut that thread. So I've cleaned that out. I'm just going to drop a little bit of CA glue in there when we thread this all together. It's probably not necessary, and to be honest, the CA glue, I don't know how well it's going to stand up to the repeated beatings this thing's going to get, but it can't hurt to put some in there. So I'm going to. So we've got that end there for making that sort of pattern, and this end here for making more of a flame pattern. We'll glue this together and start beating it up. Okay, that seems like a pretty decent place to stop. I hit it a bit too hard on those last few, and I've actually cracked it, so that's something to note, that can happen when you're doing this. Always good to learn these things when you're experimenting. So, got some fake flame effect, hopefully happening there, and then quilting there and there. And now all that's left to do is sand it off flat. We're going to be taking off the the sort of a skim layer off the top, and hopefully the bent wood fibres will still be right at the bottom of where we are sanding to. So we're not actually going to sand them out. We're just going to level the surface, and hopefully we get something that looks kind of neat. Okay, we are sanded out to 240, which is normally where I like to begin any finishing operation. I can still see some of where I've put the flame, and I can't see a lot of the quilting, but that may change in a second. I have super glue, which is my fast, multi-purpose, and very sticky finish for testing out this sort of thing. Oh yeah. Now, one of the things I was worried about was oh, yes, stinks. One of the things I was worried about was adding moisture to the wood and having it raise those fibres back up again. And I can't feel it happening, although I can definitely smell it. Yeah, that smells nasty. That should be enough glue for now. I need to ventilate the area. Alright, it's about an hour later. The super glue has dried and I've polished it out to 2000 grit. Just gave it a light sanding by hand. It's come up rather smooth. That's one of the good things about CA glue as a finish, is it's fast. Love that. It's a toxic mess, but it's actually very, very fast and very good. So, what have we learned? Well, there's a few interesting things going on here. This area here looks the best. Under daylight, it looks very nice. You've got some chatoyance and some shimmer there. It's come up rather good. However, the rest of it is not that great. There's a little bit, there's a nice area up here, and the rest of it is just garbage. Right in here you can see where I've hit too hard on the tool and it's broken the wood fibres along the top edge. Also, down here where I just hit that too hard and cracked the wood, so that's no good at all. With the flame side of things, it sort of looks a bit uneven. It's gone very much darker where I've hit it. Now, I suspect that's because I hadn't sanded this wood, and when I went to sand it, I discovered that it was old, it had greyed. I think that is greying from unsanded wood prior to the abuse. And you can see the same thing happening up here and in the centre here. The flame effect is quite uneven. There's considerably more happening at the ends, where the end of the tool went in, and then either the wood wasn't perfectly flat, or I sanded too much and I took the flame out of the middle. Because there's nothing happening in this area at all, and there's plenty at each end. That end kind of looks the best. But I mean, it's just, we're not even close to what I'm hoping to get to. So, things we can do. Number one, a more controlled approach to hitting the thing, and I'm considering even modifying a press so that the thing just gets pressed in where we want it every time. That'll let us get a slightly better pattern, because it looks a bit random and it looks a bit strange. Also, prepping the wood first, and then sanding out appropriately afterwards. So, we'll take a more measured approach and try the same thing again. Alright, the results of round 2 are in, and that little bit there is what we're looking for. It doesn't look like it's obviously been dented with something, and it's just got a nice bit of shimmer, a nice bit of chatoyance when you hold it up in the daylight. Now, the way I got that bit was just very, very lightly tapping the thing as I rolled it back and forth. So that was an interesting thing to learn. What I'm going to do for round 3 is spin this up on the disc sander and round the whole thing over, and hopefully I'll be able to cut some very, very nice looking figure into the top of what was a relatively dull piece of wood. Yeah. Well, that hasn't really worked. It just looks dirty. It's got little dark spots on it. Doesn't look particularly good. However, I am very impressed with the quality of the wood that I found under this paint. I've had this board sitting around for quite some time. So, yeah, I've got a much larger piece of it too, so that's interesting to know that that's there. I think the issue may be that this wood is just too dark. It's not really going to grab the light and reflect it out, no matter which way the grain is going, and denting it just causes it to, I don't know, hold onto the light and look darker, depending on which direction you've got it on. So I think a lighter wood. Alright, here is a small piece of Quilla, little offcut, and a small piece of oak. I imagine that I'll have to beat on these pretty hard to get the same amount of denting, but yeah, we'll see how we go. Alright, now we've got some interesting results here. I can't show you these outside because it's started to cloud over and rain because the weather in New Zealand is insane. However, under the right lights, these do actually show signs of heading in the right direction. They are considerably harder than the Rimu. The oak, being a lighter wood, has some still visible bruising marks in one direction, but if you look at it from the other direction, you've actually got that shimmer, you've got the figured effect that we're looking for. The Quilla, on the other hand, has plenty of figured effect. That's absolutely wonderful the way that's turned out. It's very hard, it's dark, it doesn't show the bruising effect, it just comes up with a nice shiny sparkle to it. So where does that leave us in terms of where to go from here? Well, Quilla appears to be the winner on the day. This thing appears to work well when it's hit quite hard, but in terms of getting an actual flame effect, I've got a theory that we'll test very shortly, that a lot of pieces of steel just laid out and then pressed in. The most convenient way to do this in bulk would be to have two pieces. Press them together. Let's make a steel and Quilla sandwich. So it's just occurred to me, as I was cutting up that perfectly good length of rod, that a much better way of doing this, rather than wasting a perfectly good length of steel rod like I have, would be to simply use giant nails. Look what I found. Okay, there's no point in trying to sand and finish this, because on a scale of success, this isn't one. You can't even see that on camera. There's just only the barest indentations in there. It's definitely not had the effect we wanted. So, I think you would need a really, really heavy hydraulic press to really crush those flat. Which, of course, I don't have, so it's rapidly looking like this may not work. But I've got one more trick up my sleeve. We're trying to bend wood fibres, and when you want to bend wood, you need water and heat. Yeah. We'll let it cool down in here for half an hour or so, because we want the wood to take on as much of the shape of the nails as possible. So we'll leave it clamped up, and we'll come back soon and see what we've got. Well, as to be expected, that didn't really work. When you're bending wood, you need a lot of heat and a lot of steam for a long time to really soften those fibres up, and that, it's a slight improvement on what we had before, but still nowhere near where we want to be. I don't have any proper steam bending equipment. I would love to have some. That would be great to build that and start experimenting with that. I don't have a hydraulic press or like a big book press or something. Again, I would love to have that equipment. If you've got any other ideas of things we could try here, then please, by all means, let me know in the comments. If you have tried this yourself, then let us know how you got on. And yeah, that's about it, I suppose, on that thunderous anticlimax. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for subscribing. Although, frankly, after this lot, I don't know why you would. And I'll see you next week. Cheers.